This is just a beautiful, beautiful film.
Thanks.
That's it's. I was really just in awe of its subtlety because it's not a movie that really strives for a powerful effect because it doesn't really need to.
No, totally.
And how did that sort of? How did Jeff Nichols' subtle way of working? How did that? How did you work with that?
Sure. Well, I think, uh, I knew from initially, just from reading the script, that, um, my job as a costume designer in this movie would be to really just subtly support the story. And it was about the story. And, it's never usually about the wardrobe, but it's especially sort of not about the wardrobe in this kind of a story. And, uh, I think as a team and as a collaborator with Jeff, I kind of know that there are these sort of emotional moments, and I know that we need to kind of let them have their time and their breadth, sort of. And so something that I do is I just kind of make sure that when I know those moments are happening, that I'm not there's not sort of a anything distracting from it.
Right, right. I mean, it's the interesting thing because it's like with your job, especially in a movie like this. I mean, you want to get the period costumes right, but you don't want them to call too much attention to themselves.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's my job is to make sure that every zipper and every button and every fabric and every print and every pattern and every cut and every fit is, period accurate, and also that um, it reflects the characters, and in this case, characters that were actually real people.
Yeah.
So it was really important that we understood who they were, and then we were able to kind of support that.
Nice. And in terms of this being like real characters you're getting costumes for, does that make your job a little more challenging than if they were fictional?
I would say it's different. It's not. I haven't done real people, real story yet, and so in this case, Jeff and everyone, we wanted to make something that was just true to them, and not based off of them and not inspired by, but really truly tell their story. And so it was about research, that first phase of research, researching them and the imagery that we had access to, from Nancy Brisky's awesome documentary, and from um, Gray Valet's photography, and then kind of just doing a regional research onslaught of finding as many pictures of real people in this similar area,
Mm-hmm.
in Virginia, in the United States of America at that time, and figuring out what that look was.
Aside from the Life magazine photos, were there any other photos that really informed your work on this film?
There were random photos, but they're not like special photographers per se.
Mm-hmm.
If that answers your
Oh
question.
yeah,
You
sure,
know.
sure. It's like whatever works.
Yeah,
Whatever
yeah. I
informs
think
it.
it was. We would, we kind of just scoured, and we would find random family photos, or we would find other families, or we would find. I mean, sometimes it would be like class photos, or sometimes it would. It just kind of depended.
Yeah, definitely,
Sorry.
definitely. And were there any styles or types of clothing from the period that you wanted to avoid for being too cliche, or
Yeah, I mean, I think it's nice that you asked that question, because I think something that all the filmmakers on this, Adam and Jeff and Chad and me, and everyone's like really cognizant of those kind of not wanting to put things in that feel cliche, or feel what the magazine spreads might have had, or what what picture cards are often like that. They've got this like look about them that just feels like a picture car. And the same thing with the wardrobe. We were it, I would know it in the fitting, but we were always looking for things that just felt like real clothing, and not like 50s 50s clothing.
Yeah, so like a lot of movies like this, you usually expect it to like the clothing to speak, to yell out to you like a particular decade.
Exactly.
But that probably would have taken away from this movie.
Yeah, I think it would have, and I think also, it wasn't really it's not a fashion world, and so, the fashion was slower, and so whatever was happening in maybe New York City in, 1953 was maybe happening in 1957 in Virginia, or rural Virginia. So, slower,
Right.
sort of accruing of fashion.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and in terms of like working with Jeff Nichols, who you've worked with in the past, I mean, what does he ask of you most when it comes to costumes?
What does Jeff ask most? I think I would say that he asks to care as a creator, as a partial creator of on the movie. I mean, he doesn't really ask it of us, but I think that's what he likes, or what hopefully a lot of people like, is just someone who sort of feels passionate about their craft and loving what they do and always wanting it to be better and the best it can be.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, with his movies, I mean, he always seems to go for a realism that's like subtle yet powerful.
Yeah.
And this one is certainly no exception. In terms of, like, we see the costumes up there on the poster. I mean, did the actors ever like try to get you to include a certain piece of clothing, or were they pretty much open?
No, I don't think we really had anything like that, but I think, there were definitely certain looks that, either of them would sort of feel were more like, oh, I think this feels more like late Mildred, like older Mildred, or, maybe this feels more like, I think at some point we got the rise of the pants right for Richard, for Joel, and I think, at that moment he was like, wow, I feel like him now, like this feels like the character,
Yeah.
So there are those moments where it clicks and it's happening.
Right. Because it's always interesting to see, an actor put on a costume. It's like suddenly they get the character.
Yeah,
Except-
totally. And vice versa, suddenly you get the costume because the actor just walked into the clothing.
Right.
Both ways.
I mean, with a movie like this that deals with a different period of time, did you ever like have to go to like vintage clothing stores, or did you just work with the material that you had?
Yeah, we sourced from vintage clothing stores, from stores in New York and all over the country. We online, from the costume houses in Los Angeles, from people's storage units that they have in random places near where we were shooting, that they would just have lots of vintage clothing. Sheriff Brooks's family loaned us the uniform that he had.
Oh wow.
That was his, and so we didn't actually wind up using the actual uniform, but we took it for its style and emulated it. Yeah, we sourced and resourced kind of from everywhere, and then we were sourcing vintage fabrics and building things based on that. Had this amazing men's workwear. He has a clothing company called Rising Sun, and he helped us to build Richard's pants and a lot of his work shirts and his hat and a lot of the canvas and cotton and twill pieces.
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting to see you have Sheriff Brooks's family get his actual uniform. I mean, there's something very imposing about Brooks as he's portrayed in this movie.
Yeah.
It's just fascinating to watch. It's, I mean, did you ever feel like you had to like pull back on that costume because the actor was like maybe more powerful or didn't need too much? Or?
Yeah, Martin Shokas is pretty awesome and powerful. I would say that I think anytime an actor is actually in the costume, it does affect the costume itself. I don't think there was any instance where we. It's always a symbiotic thing, we put the actor sort of in the wardrobe and the costume, and we adjust it at the time.
Nice. Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. No, I don't know how this works. It's just fascinating to know more about your line of work, because it's not something I'm very familiar with.
Sure.
Yeah, and what was like the most complicated costume you had to come up with or put together for this movie?
Um, I think Ruth's bellies, the pregnancy bellies, and the different stages, and the different scenes, and the clothing laying on top of it. You know, back then they didn't wear pregnancy clothes that was really tight and form fitting, and like we do today. And it was more subtle, and so it was a little harder to show different stages of the belly within. Within our time frame, and so because the clothing sort of is bigger, and rewind.
Was there ever like a point where you're dealing with a lot of styles and you just decide to do something a little more contemporary with the costumes?
I mean, no, we were always like, it was always about making sure that it was period accurate. I think that a lot of Richard's workwear is apropos of a lot of fashion today for men. Men's workwear is a cornerstone of sort of men's fashion now, and so I think a lot of that stuff is could be wearable today and would be awesome. But no, we were focusing on period accuracy and
Right.
telling the story that just existed in that world in that time.
Yeah, it's like looking at Richard's shirt in that photo. It's like I used to wear those kind of shirts like in high school, and it's just
Yeah.
that it almost has a timeless feel to it.
Yeah.
As a result.
Yeah,
so.
we hopefully we're making some timeless decisions.
Yeah, it's sort of like it's got to be of a certain period, but it could also be timeless. I mean, did the design of the costumes evolve during shooting at all, or did they pretty much stay the same?
No, we pretty much had the whole. I had almost every costume laid out for the whole movie for these two, before we started shooting.
Oh, nice.
And then the rest of the movie was just about all the other supporting characters, that evolved a little bit, but yeah.
And you've also, in addition to working with Jeff Nichols, you also worked with Nicholas Winding Refn on his films, and that's a major contrast, it seems, because Nicholas seems very meticulous about his costumes and Drive and the Neon Demon.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what would you say is like the main difference between working with those two directors?
Every director I work with I have a different feel with, but I would say that all the directors that I've worked with or worked with more than once are really supportive of me and the craft, and sort of employing me to bring my best to the table. And I think that they're actually similar in that sense, that sort of giving me the trust and the inspiration to do the best I can do, and make the best costumes I can make.
So it's like, I mean, different styles, but still same sort of working relationship.
I would say, yeah.
Nice. And did you ever feel like, I maybe I've asked you this already, but
That's okay.
did you ever feel like the clothing had to be as subtle as the acting? The acting's really subtle in this movie, which is wonderful.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think the subtlety of the whole tone of the movie had to sort of work together with the acting and the production design and the cinematography, and the whole. I think if any departments went outside of that, you would notice it and feel it, and so I think we all sort of swam in this subtle zone.
Yeah, I mean, that seems to be the case with a lot of Jeff Nichols movies, that they do have this subtle sort of power about them.
Yeah.
And this one in particular, because it's dealing with with people from real life and sort of like the ordinary life they lead, and it's important to show it as ordinary, because
Exactly.
it's not something that needs to be overly done or over dramatic.
Yeah, for sure. I think most important part was that we connected with Richard and Mildred because they felt, they were having a relationship that we could relate to, a marriage and a life and a loving companionship that's relatable to everybody.
Right. Right. And how often were you on set for this movie?
Quite a bit, actually.
Quite a bit.
Not always, but on this I was quite a bit. Probably every day.
Probably every day.
Every
Cool.
day, for a lot of time.
Nice. In terms of your job, I mean, do you always have but you must have materials ready in case something goes wrong with the costumes, right? Or if the actor has a concern.
Yeah, we have our trailer there, and I always kind of have backups. We call them backups.
Backups. That's what it's called. So it's like there's a
Backups. There's a whole system of backups happening behind the scenes.
So you always got to have everything ready
Yeah.
in case anything goes wrong. And
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of movies, I mean, this is a fairly low budgeted movie, I think. And I mean, is there a big difference between working on a low budget production to something that's a big budget, or for you? Or?
Sometimes I feel as if the bigger the budget, more people are making decisions.
Yeah.
So I think maybe that's the biggest difference I can think of right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm which costume would you say that you're the proudest of in this movie?
Let's see. I think I really love the scene where Mildred is wearing a black and white check dress with a little over jacket, and Richard's in a white button-down shirt and some black slacks. It was a picture we had of Richard and Mildred at a race, a car race, and I feel like I really nailed it and accurately recreated both of those costumes.
Yeah, I mean, those sequences I liked a lot because everybody, they really looked just. I mean, the costumes never really drew attention to themselves. They really just looked like, working class people from that time and place. That really sort of stood out in a great way.
Yeah.
And, I mean, have you had any other movies where you had to be that, subtle with the costuming at all?
I think I'm always kind of making sure that the costumes are just supporting the story.
Right.
And that it's not about the costume. Sometimes I do, sometimes it is, and we have to go for it, but a lot of times it's about making it fit with the character and not at all about the clothing itself, and about, really just making a viewer believe in this character, in this moment, in this issue, or in this world that we're creating in our movie. And I think subtlety is usually the best way to support making a viewer believe. So not taking them out of the situation and making them aware of, the things that we're creating.
Right, yeah. I mean, it always seems to be, just from a distance for me, it's always you see a lot of movies where the costumes are very extravagant, and it always seems to be something costume designers are always going for, something that really just sort of stands out. But in a movie like this, it's almost like the costumes have to stand out, but not in a way that just that speaks out so loudly.
Yeah, they have to basically just say, we are this time period.
Yeah.
We are really it.
Yeah. No, you guys all did a really good job with that.
Thanks.
Here, because this is a movie that really thrives on reality and just sort of the reality of the period, and that's not always easy to pull off.
Yeah, totally.
So
Thank
yeah.
you.
But congratulations on your work here, and
Thanks.
congratulations on the movie.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.